Well, y'all knew this was coming. Marvel's Eternals. Now, I'm sure all of you have heard of the recent controversy around the review bombing that's been happening to this film. And if you don't know what that is, clearly you're living under a rock, but I'll explain it anyway. What's been happening, and this isn't the first time this year this has happened, mind you. I believe this is the third time this year it's happened, and I'll get into the other two in a second. Review bombing happens when a bunch of people who haven't even seen the movie go to one of these sites where you rate movies and give it the lowest rating they possibly can, either out of spite or because they have some kind of personal agenda against it. And the other two times this happened, the first time it happened was with Godzilla vs. Kong. And that was due to the Snyder cult, again, due to them, I guess, trying to give it bad buzz for people to go watch Snyder. So I don't remember the exact details of it, but I know for a fact it was the Snyder stuff. I read multiple articles on it, I'm not bringing this shit up. And then they did it again when it came to the Suicide Squad, because they're protesting people trying to make good films. I didn't like the Suicide Squad, but it's better than Snyder's crap. And they just want Snyder to keep making shitty movies, so they'll do anything they can to make sure he sticks around. And thankfully he won't. But this one was different, which kind of surprised me, actually. When I heard review bombing, I immediately thought I knew what it was. This one's probably worse. It's a bunch of people being pissy about the representation in this movie. And this is something you may all know that I don't give two shits about. I only care about how the movie is made. I don't give a shit about how different things are represented. I don't care, I just want a good movie. But a bunch of people decided to go shit on this movie despite the fact, and this wasn't even like just a couple days ago when, maybe they did say they just saw it in one of the opening night or something. No, this happened 2 weeks ago. So the movie hadn't even come out yet. And they were being all pissy about how it has poor representation when they haven't even seen the movie. Purely the fact that it has that stuff in it is why they were bombing the film, which is utter bullshit. And I can tell the critics are doing the same thing. Because because the lowest rated for the MCU was Thor: The Dark World. You're seriously going to tell me this is worse than Thor: The Dark World, or The Incredible Hulk, or Captain Marvel? Come on. So this was the final straw for me giving two shits about looking at reviews online. I know I'm making reviews here, but I'm not a critic, per se. I'm not. So this is the final straw for me giving two shits about what they say. This is the last one. It's already happened a few times. And there are a few times okay, I'm done, but this time I mean it. I'm done giving two shits. Even still, when I had I wrote down all the movies I'm gonna see, all I'm gonna review, and I added the critics score to it, the Rotten Tomatoes score, and I've been doing that for a while. I took it off. I took them off. Because I'm done with that. So, with that out of the way, this is actually really good. Yeah, big surprise, I'm a big Marvel fan, but this movie really showed who were real Marvel fans. Because you can easily spot the fake ones by people intentionally shitting on it. I'm not saying, you can be a Marvel fan and dislike a movie all you want, but when it's getting this level of hate, especially when the audience score is double the critic score, you can tell who the real Marvel fans are, and who the fake Marvel fans are, who are just trying to avoid controversy, or who are trying to avoid getting, So the same people who are avoiding talking shit about the Snyder movie, about the Snyder Cut, because, I don't want people yelling at me in the comments. Yeah, fuck off. I don't care. I enjoy getting the hate from the Snyder fanboys. I enjoy that so much. That's really the entire point of me making all the Snyder Cut videos, but I'm getting off topic again. I'm talking about a Marvel film. And this year, Marvel has been very strong, actually. Especially after last year, they were nowhere to be found, for obvious reasons, and all of them were pushed to this year. They really needed to step up their game, and that's exactly what they did. All of the shows have been very good. What If was so-so, but the three live-action ones, the ones that are actually canon to this plotline, The other one, yes, What If is technically canon, but it's not in the same universe, so it doesn't count. All the ones that are connected to the films were really good. And then I really liked Black Widow, and Shang-Chi was awesome. I'd say this one is almost as good as Shang-Chi. And if you guys saw my Shang-Chi review, you know I really liked that movie, so this is really high praise. Yeah, I don't... You can really tell that this movie is just getting shit on by people who just want to shit on it, because I don't see what the issue is. I really don't. The representation, what's the problem? I'll tell you what, nothing. And a big complaint I've been seeing that the critics, not the audience, the critics have been using is, it doesn't feel like a Marvel film. And these are the same people who, for the past 5 or 6 years, have been complaining that they want to film away from the Marvel formula. Which is not only a bullshit complaint, but now you have one that's extremely different, and now you're saying it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. Yeah, that was the first last straw. I'm like, okay, nope, no. So yeah, and does it feel like a Marvel movie? Does it need to? That's the entire point. Is that it's extremely different. It's a different set of characters. They're not exactly superheroes because they're these sentient beings. You can make a comparison to Thor, but they're not even like Thor. So yeah, you'd think this is going to be really different. The villain is very different. All the heroes are very different. The action is incredibly creative, especially the final battle. I'm not going to go into spoilers in this review, but... To be fair, I think I can actually do it, because it is a long movie. It's 2 hours and 37 minutes, making it it'll be third longest not Far From Home. I keep wanting to call it Far From Home. Once No Way Home comes out, I think that one's 2 minutes longer. So as of now, it's the second longest, behind Avengers Endgame's 3 hours, but honestly, it didn't feel like it. Much like Shang-Chi, that one was like 2 hours and 12, I didn't feel the length hanging over my head. And that shows that your movie has good pacing, because every scene in this movie, despite its length, the movie's length, every scene drives the story. There isn't a ton of filler. There isn't any padding in this movie. Unlike something like all of Snyder films do, where half the movie is padding, because he doesn't know how to tell a coherent story. This one, everything either pushes the character's motivation, or the villain's plan, or it brings characters together. Every scene has a purpose to it. Or it establishes how they're being connected to the planet now, how they've become more emotionally attached to the planet. It all comes together very well. Well, that's helped by the direction by Chloe Zhao, who's a very good director, and the editing, which is actually very good. I complain a lot about editing, because it's one of the most important aspects of filmmaking. It's not the flashiest, but the cinematography and the editing are the lens through which we view the story. The cinematography in this is fan-freaking-tastic. There are so many beautiful shots in this. The special effects look amazing. The only exception I can make on the CGI is there is one brief shot of a jet flying. It's just like a normal jet. It's just flying across the air. It looked pretty noticeable, but other than that, it looked pretty good. I mean, the deviants did kind of look a little cartoonish, but it matched, and they were actually they were very well detailed, though, so it doesn't really matter. And like I said, the action is incredibly creative. The final battle is probably one of the best final battles in the MCU. How all the heroes use their certain abilities to their advantage against the villain, and how the villain is able to counteract them. It all works. And as you can clearly tell, judged by the poster alone, this movie has a stacked cast. And I mean stacked. Angelina Jolie, Salma Hayek, Kit Harington, Richard Madden, the list goes on. And there are a couple surprise characters in the credits, or in the credit scenes. I'll talk about those later, and I'll give you a warning beforehand, because they are worth talking about here. Black Widow, the one wasn't really worth going into, neither Shang-Chi, but this one really is worth going into. The music is outstanding. One of the complaints people had for years in probably the first 2 or 3 phases of the MCU was that the music was always kind of drowned out in the background. This one definitely didn't have that problem. You could hear the score the entire time, and it is fantastic. And I like all the characters. My favorite character was probably the deaf speedster. That's probably like, and her and like the black guy, the tech guy. That's like the only names I can't remember. But the fact I'm able to remember these characters, a lot of these characters' names, after knowing all of them for only 2.5 hours, as opposed to the other ones where I've known for several movies, it's impressive how it made me attached to these characters that honestly I know nothing about. I didn't read the Eternals comic. I've read plenty of Marvel comics, but much like Shang-Chi, Eternals was not really something I got into. I just didn't have much interest in reading it. If I wanted to read a team, I usually read the Avengers, Fantastic Four, or X-Men, and then I'd read some like other obscure ones, like Daredevil or Ghost Rider. Those aren't obscure, but you get my point. Eternals wasn't really a comic series I got into, but I may go back and read some of the comics now, because this movie was very well done. And now it's time to get into the after-credits scenes. And yes, I'm going to be talking about spoilers here, because they are worth talking about. The first one, you have a character named Pip. I guess he's like a little dwarf thing. Played by Patton Oswalt, of all people. Okay. You already played MODOK in that awful Hulu show. Why not have him here? And then a character named Star Fox, yes, much like the video game franchise, shows up, played by Harry Styles. As in One Direction's Harry Styles. I remember seeing him on the cast list when I looked at this movie up. But like when I did some when I was Googling the movie, because I was, for obvious reasons, and I saw Harry Styles on the list. I'm like, you're kidding me, right? I thought it was just gonna be some cameo he had, or it was just gonna be a quick moment. But no, he is setting up a major plot thread for a future film. And honestly, I didn't hate that he was here. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge fan of One Direction. I'm not a huge fan of boy bands to begin with. But honestly, he wasn't, for the minute he was on screen, he wasn't that bad. And I will give credit to this movie. I completely forgot he was supposed to be in here, because the first 2.5 hours, he didn't show up. And then mid-credits scene, I'm like, oh, who's coming through this little portal that's going through, and all of a sudden, Harry Styles walks in. I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I didn't hate that it was Harry Styles. I'd be dead serious. And then the second one has Kit Harington's character, who I already knew ahead of time was Black Knight. He digs up this sword, and I guess he's going to become the Black Knight now. That was weird that they gave him. He had very little screen time in this movie, but this showed why. They were just kind of setting him up. And then someone says a line off screen, and I'm going to be completely honest. I had no idea who it was. Although I later looked it up, it was Blade. That is awesome. Mahershala Ali's Blade has finally shown up. I wish he'd been on screen, but whatever. That was one thing I wish they'd done that after credit scene, is that, oh, it's just some voice talking to him off screen. Had they shown Blade, I think it would have been a bit more impactful. I'd have been like, oh, damn, because I had no idea he was going to be in this. And he only kind of was, but that's not the point. But either way, it's still cool. I can't wait for the Blade movie. I like the first two, I guess. The second one's really good. I actually enjoyed the second one. The first one's meh. Third one's awful. And all of those were written by David S. Goyer. That's probably why I don't actually really like any of them, is because David S. Goyer is a shitty screenwriter. But yeah, overall, I can't really think of anything this movie did wrong. I'm dead serious. I was planning on giving this a 5 out of 5 out of spite anyway, but 5 out of 5. Yeah, this movie, everything about this movie worked, and partly out of spite. I'm not gonna lie. I'm being intentionally biased here. This movie really worked. No, thank you all so much for watching. Now, what do you guys think of Eternals? Because from what I've seen, the actual fans, like regular people who aren't trying to bomb this movie like we did at Hiroshima, although it occurs to me that's a little ironic, and if you've seen the movie, you know why. So I want to know what real fans are thinking of this, because it seems like the general consensus is that it's really good by the fans. So I'm curious what you guys think. What you guys thought. And yeah, that's all I got for Eternals, and I can't wait for Spider-Man No Way Home. So, see ya.